Today we're going to recap WWDC 2016. So we're going to go through Apple's new releases in the same order that they did in the keynote presentation that they gave earlier today. So let's start with watchOS 3. So watchOS 3 doesn't bring that much new functionality to the Apple Watch. One of the main features is that the Apple Watch now has a dock which can be accessed by pressing the button right under the digital crown, the button which used to bring up your favorite contacts list. watchOS 3 also now has a control center which, just like on an iPhone or an iPad, can be accessed by swiping up from the bottom of the screen. watchOS 3 also brings the new scribble reply option, basically where you can draw the letter on the screen and then it'll convert it to text and send it. Obviously that's quite a bit slower than just taking out your iPhone and doing it there, but you know what, if you want to look like an idiot and scribble on your watch, I guess that's fine. There's also a new SOS feature. If you press and hold the side button below the digital crown, it'll give you a countdown telling you that it's about to call 911. That could be useful or really annoying if you accidentally keep calling the police. There's also a new activity sharing feature which allows you to see the activity rings of your friends and family, so you can snoop on them and see how inadequate you are compared to them. You can also send smack talk.
Yo,
is that for real?
You're weak.
Can you actually send smack? Why would they make that? Yo, bud, you need to step up your walking game, man. But why would you want that? Now let's move on to tvOS. Coming soon is a new Apple TV remote app, which is similar in many ways to the current app. It will feature the touch screen for navigation, as well as the menu, the play, pause, and a Siri control button. It also uses accelerometers and gyroscopes so that it can be used as a game controller for playing games. My favorite new feature for tvOS is single sign-on. So with single sign-on, what you can do is basically authenticate your Apple TV, which means that you won't have to do all those signing up and going to a URL and putting in an authentication code and then logging into your carrier stuff for all of your cable TV apps. You can sign on once, and that'll apply to all of the apps, and you don't have to worry about it ever again. Now let's talk about macOS, and that is actually the first major announcement, which is that Apple is renaming OS X to macOS to make it more harmonious with their other operating system naming schemes. So the first version of macOS is Sierra. So I guess you could call it 10.12, but you're not supposed to because it's macOS, so the 10.12 doesn't matter. It's just macOS Sierra. There we go. So the first feature that they talked about is auto unlock. Basically, when you open your Mac, instead of entering a password, your Apple Watch can unlock it for you automatically. Yes, that does mean you have to have an Apple Watch to use it. The next thing was Universal Clipboard, which is basically that copy and paste can now work between your Mac and your iOS devices. So if you copy a bunch of text on your Mac, you can then paste it into something on your iPhone. That may sound a little bit mundane, but I personally think that it could be super useful when you want to take a bunch of text from your computer to your phone without either emailing it to yourself or airdropping a document or sending it in a message to yourself. It could be very efficient. There's also a new update to iCloud Drive, which means that all of your files on your desktop on your Mac will not only be available on your other Macs, but also on your iOS devices. That could be huge. To have a document saved to your desktop that then shows up on your phone, that's really useful. The next thing was storage optimization, which, as you could probably guess, optimizes your storage. Apple Pay is now available for the web. You'll be able to authenticate it using Touch ID on your iPhone that will allow you to make a purchase online on your Mac. There are also improved tabs and picture-in-picture support for Safari now. And of course, the big release, Siri is now available on macOS. There are two ways to access it, either on the top right corner in that little bar at the top, or down below in the dock where it will have its own icon. Siri results will be available in the notification center that you can drag directly into documents. Let's talk now about iOS 10. I'm really looking forward to the new redesigned lock screen. But the lock screen has been kind of stagnant since iOS 7. And especially now with the super fast Touch ID on the iPhone 6s, it's pretty easy to just blow right past your notifications on the lock screen without even getting a chance to look at them. With that in mind, Apple has implemented a new feature called Raise to Wake. Basically, you hold the phone up and it will turn on and allow you to see what are now called rich notifications. Basically, they will have a lot more info that can be expanded further if you 3D touch on them. There's also a redesigned control center which allows you to swipe between pages to access things like music controls. There are also improvements to 3D touch on the home screen. Currently, all you can do is see shortcuts within applications. But in iOS 10, you'll be able to actually see little peeks at the UI. So for health, you'll be able to see your activity rings and so on. There are also new APIs for Siri, so developers can actually modify Siri and Siri will be able to send messages using other applications than just the default iMessage app on the phone. QuickType also has seen some improvements with more intelligent learning based on context in your messages. It can also schedule an event using the context in your message history. For example, it can autofill the name of the activity, the location, and the time based on previous messages. Facial recognition is coming to photos. They're now using more image scanning to cluster photos into memories and moments that you can then view with a slideshow that you can choose a soundtrack to, and, you know, kind of like a little iMovie slideshow, but you can do it right on your phone, super easy, nice and quick, yay. There's now a lot more functionality within Apple Maps. For example, you can have extensions like Open Table to book a reservation, Uber to call a cab, and then actually see live tracking of your Uber as it's coming. So you can do all of that without even having to leave the Maps app. There's also a slightly redesigned navigation interface which I quite like. The Music app has also seen a redesign. I don't much care for the new design. There's not all that much new functionality, but there is new organization and UI design, and again, I don't much care for it. There's a new design for Apple News, specifically on the iPad, that organizes all of your articles in a way that actually makes it look rather nice, kind of like an actual newspaper with all the different stories, and I really like that design. It looks classy. On iOS 10, for the first time, you can actually delete stock Apple applications. Yay! A lot of people really hate the stock Apple apps, so now the first thing you can do when updating to iOS 10 is just throw them all away. Have you ever gotten those phone calls from an unknown number and you can't tell if it's your friend from 20 years ago that you've been dying to talk to or just some spam guy who's trying to give you a virus? Well, the new API for voicemail can actually detect whether it thinks the number calling you is spam or whether it's a legitimate phone number with an actual human being on the other line. And then comes messages. In the presentation for messages, they portrayed it as revolutionary with tons of new features. Personally, I think they're all a bit gimmicky. You get new things like bubble effects, which are pretty much self-explanatory. The bubbles do stuff. You can also send it with like invisible ink where they have to swipe across it to see the message. It can sense when you might want to put an emoji there and replace a word with an emoji. And you can send it with like full screen animations and fireworks and lights and stuff. There's also handwritten messages supported so that you can send a picture of a penis to your friend. There's also tap back, which allows you to tap on it and then it'll send like a little message that you can choose. And that's fun, I guess. I guess those are cool, but personally I think they're pretty gimmicky and I will probably never ever use them. After all of the new operating systems, Tim Cook came on to talk about Swift Playgrounds. Now, I'm not a programmer, so I brought in my friend Noah from Pogo, and he's here to explain what Swift Playgrounds actually is. Noah, take it away.
First of all, Luke, I'm definitely not your friend. Swift Playgrounds is Apple's way of getting into the teaching kids to code craze. It's a huge deal these days. We have code.org, Hour of Code, Scratch, and all of these other different services that attempt to teach coding, and now Apple has joined that. Swift Playgrounds is a free app available for the iPad, and it allows kids to explore programming with the Swift language in a very simple way.
Thanks, Noah. And with that, Tim Cook wrapped up his speech in a way that made it sound like he was about to introduce something else, but then he didn't. So that's all for today's video. As usual, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Luke Miani. Leave a like down below, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos. Speaking of more videos, I will not be able to post a video for the next 2 weeks because I will be away in El Salvador. So I will see you guys in July.